Conor McGregor and the country of Ireland are inextricably linked. In the domain of fighting, it's virtually impossible to divide the two, especially when you're talking MMA, because like it or not, McGregor is Irish MMA. And don't get me wrong, there were a lot of people who helped ignite the fuse which led to the explosion of the sport in Ireland, but don't get it twisted, McGregor was the bomb. So as far as the Irish MMA boom is concerned, there really is only one Conor McGregor. And no, not to fight nerds like me, or you're watching this video so I guess you, but to my parents, my grandparents and so on, you know, the mainstream. However, it is reciprocal. As much as he gave to Ireland, Ireland gave as much back. His nationality was undeniably crucial to his rise in popularity. And his Irishness was equally as important as his money, his mouth, and his whiskey. Yeah, I said it. Don't punch me. And that's why this question is essential. Have the Irish turned on Conor McGregor? The man they call Notorious already had a cult following before he made his UFC debut in Stockholm back in April of 2013. But it was just that, a cult following concentrated inside Ireland's MMA community. It was relatively small and the demographic was narrow as you'd expect. Outside of that commune, many Irish people didn't even know the sport existed. And if they did, they often confused it with professional wrestling. But the community itself was vocal and loud, much like the man himself. And they relished any opportunity they got to tell the world about their guy. Before Stockholm, when UFC President Dana White visited Ireland to accept an award at Trinity College, he was bombarded with questions about McGregor. Likewise, MMA journalist Ariel Helwani, don't tell Luke Thomas I said journalist, was inundated with requests to have him on his show, the MMA Hour. And when Helwani obliged and made that now famous Skype call to Dublin and McGregor opened his mouth, he was an instant hit. It was clear that even Ariel was caught off guard by McGregor's charisma. After the interview ended, his producer New York Rick declared that that was the best guest they've ever had and the best interview they've ever done.
There he is, Conor McGregor stopping by, and wow, as I see on my Twitter right here, that was unbelievable. That might be one of our greatest guests ever.
It's the best guest ever.
He's up there, right?
No, it's number one. There's no other guest to talk about. This is the best guest and the best interview we've had. And I don't want to hate on other guests because we've had great ones. I mean, this has been a great show with Gary Cook and Brian Stan, et cetera, et cetera. But wow, let us know where does Conor McGregor rank as far as all-time great MMA Hour guests? And not only that, first time on the MMA Hour, comfortable, dropping lines, eating blueberries, laughing. I mean, he was outstanding. That was unbelievable.
And it was outstanding, especially relative to other MMA interviews. And this isn't me taking a shot at fighters, but let's be real. Most of them don't have much to say. At least not much that is interesting. And not because they're dull individuals. No, it's because there's only so much information they want to give up in an interview they probably didn't really want to do. Anyways, this led to McGregor getting more pre-fight media spots and coverage than any other debuting fighter on the prelims that I've ever seen. And at every turn, in every interview, in every scrum, in every appearance, McGregor made sure to praise his home fans and the country itself.
To me, that's what dreams are, you know, that's what my dreams are, carrying that flag in there. I like to show that when I'm in there, you know what I mean, show pride in where I'm from. I'm going to go in there and represent my country, you know what I mean, I'm going to rock that tricolour with pride.
He romanticised the country almost, and in my humble opinion, you know, I think that is justified. We're just a great bunch of lads. And he claimed he relished the opportunity to become a national hero and introduce MMA to the masses at home. And I think we all know what happened in Stockholm. McGregor styled on Marcus Brimage, called for 60 Gs and wore a dicky bow at his show-stealing appearance at the post-fight press conference. And from there it was off to the races. And I mean that in a metaphorical sense because there was that time where he went to the races, but yeah, let's not talk about that one. And you can study that one press conference to find reasons why Irish fans were drawn to him. Here was a talented, confident, some would say cocky, Irishman from a working class background who had only collected his social welfare benefits the week before and was now making something of himself. That's powerful. And whether he accepted this responsibility or not, or whether it was even fair, he instantly became a role model for a lot of young Irish kids. And then as he tore through the featherweight ranks, his persona naturally evolved. But despite what people claim, I don't think it dramatically shifted, at least not yet, but it definitely amplified. Before, he didn't have a pot to piss in, now he did. He was always confident and, you know, cocky, and that's certainly amplified. He used to borrow suits and now they were tailor-made to his frame. But what was constant was his public admiration for his country, and that's something that tethered MMA to him in Ireland. He guaranteed that he would drag the UFC back to Dublin, and he did. He revelled at the thought of kicking the door open for other Irish fighters, and he did it. And it all came together at UFC Fight Night 46 in Dublin. This was a momentous night for Irish MMA. It was the first time that a UFC event aired on Irish terrestrial television and reportedly reached 600,000 viewers. By US standards, that sounds like nothing, but when you remember that Ireland is a country of less than 5 million people, it quickly becomes more significant. And to put that into context, 21% of the TV viewing audience that night in the country watched. In the demographics of men 15 to 34 and adults 15 to 24, the broadcast scored just shy of 37% and 43% respectively. That's a huge portion of the country's population tuning in. And remember, for a large portion of that viewership, this would be the first time that they've ever watched the sport. And luckily for them, it was lightning in a bottle. They witnessed every fighter from the island win, including honorary Irishman Gunnar Nelson. And their night ended watching a victorious Conor McGregor, who was promoted to perfection by the UFC as a national hero, asserting that the Irish were not here to take part, but here to take over. And it's an old line now, but man, that is powerful, and it's a powerful visual too. And it was a genuinely proud moment for a lot of Irish people watching the event. And you'll notice that this narrative was fundamental in his rise to stardom. From we're not here to take part, we're here to take over, to if one goes to war, we all go to war, and to Ireland baby, we did it. Yeah. McGregor deliberately fused his success to Ireland and its people. And while Ireland has a great sporting culture and pedigree, let's be honest, global success isn't something we achieve that often. We've had our share, absolutely, and we have some truly world-class homegrown sports people. But we're not an overwhelming dominant force on the world stage. McGregor was becoming that, and people did take notice. And if you ever attended a McGregor fight, you saw the effect. His fights have become legendary for the sheer number of fans who travel from Ireland to see him compete. And I can personally attest to this. When I was in Las Vegas for UFC 194 when he won the featherweight title, you could throw a casino chip in any direction and hit an Irish fan. It was insane. And it's not only the fans that travelled from Ireland either. MMA as it relates to the UFC is a US product. It's a global business, sure, but the United States of America is the bread and butter. That's why they're so hesitant to do a pay-per-view outside of it. That's where the money is. And luckily for McGregor, and I'm not sure if you knew this, I might be breaking some news here, but the US have their fair share of Irish people. The Irish diaspora in the US is one of the country's largest. I mean, how many times have you spoke to an American and they told you that they had some kind of Irish ancestry? Almost every American person, right? And I'm not trying to make fun of that, it's for good reason. Studies have found that over 10% of Americans have identified themselves as having Irish ancestry. That's equivalent to around 33 million people. And I think Google is fucking with me because people love to hear Irish say 33. I don't know why. Actually, I do. It is kind of funny. But that's the very reason why professional wrestling promoter Vince McMahon made Terry Bollea, or as you would know him, Hulk Hogan, use the traditionally Irish surname of Hogan. He wanted a superstar for the Irish Americans because, you know, money. MMA's Irish American fans got theirs in Conor McGregor and, you know, that was money. Back in Ireland, his fights soon became must-see events, and MMA was suddenly a staple of the water cooler chat at the office. It wasn't being mistaken for pro wrestling as much, and people outside that narrow demo of the MMA community were openly discussing the sport. I mean, I remember I nearly lost my mind when I overheard two middle-aged, buttoned-up businessmen discussing whether McGregor could stop a wrestler's takedowns. I mean, if you rewind back a few years, those were the same people who would have laughed at you if you said that you liked this absurd cage fighting thing. So perceptions were changing. And it was all helped by his performances in the cage too, because that initial featherweight run it was just fun to watch. But we shouldn't view it through rose-colored glasses either. Before things went off the rails, there were some bumps in the road, and he certainly made mistakes, without a doubt. But somehow he managed to come out on the other side even more popular. The thing was, he built up so much good faith, especially with his people, that people were willing to forget. At the time, you can see why people pardoned him or either disregarded his indiscretions. And as far as I was concerned early on, most of his mistakes were ultimately forgivable. Most of the criticism came from what he said, and I mean, we're in the fight business and mental warfare is all part of the trade. He was ruthless on the road to the fight, absolutely. But he did practice what he preached. be humble in victory or defeat. When he won, he gave respect to his fallen opponent, and when that loss did come at UFC 196 against Nate Diaz, he was very humble, and people respected that. But there were some egregious moments. The lead into the Dennis Seaver fight had a stupid Nazi comment, and the build-up for the Jose Aldo fight got a little bit shaky. But his people stuck with him. And your mileage will vary for when public perception started to turn. But I think it's safe to say that it picked up a lot of its speed after the Mayweather fight. Just 3 months after that mega fight where McGregor made a reported $100 million, he jumped a cage at a Bellator MMA event in Dublin. He wanted to celebrate with his teammate Charlie Ward, but he wasn't a licensed cornerman, so that was already a big no-no. But what made it worse was that the fight wasn't even officially over. This clearly angered McGregor, and it quickly escalated into a melee with the referee. In the chaos, he even struck a commissioner who was trying to calm things down. And then came the infamous bus attack a few months later, where a new generation of people learned that trailer thingy was actually called a dolly. And then the politically and religiously charged build-up to the Khabib Nurmagomedov fight. And then the phone incident in Florida. And in between these episodes, countless notorious related rumours circulated and were scrutinised heavily in Ireland through WhatsApp groups. And remember, Ireland is a small country. You know, less than 5 million people. So stories, especially negative ones, spread like negative stories. They spread like negative stories. And whether they're true or not doesn't really matter. People will make up their minds. You know, the court of public opinion. And each one of those chipped away at McGregor's character and following. And like a Jenga tower, there are only so many stupid moves you can make before the foundations fail and that thing crashes. And then the incident in the bar happened, and that tower is pretty unstable now. And I'm sure you've all seen the incident by now, but if you haven't, here's how it played out. CCTV footage shows McGregor passing around glasses of his Proper 12 whiskey to patrons in the bar. One older man refuses his gesture. They exchange some words of which we don't hear, and it ends with McGregor punching the man in the face. And unlike his other transgressions, this one was met by universal condemnation from the Irish, and rightfully so. Because what is the defence here? There is none. I mean, what is a multi-millionaire fighter doing cheap shotting old men in a pub? It's bizarre. And not only that, speaking from an Irish perspective, the reaction was quite visceral because it hits close to home, literally. And if he'll do that, what else will he do? And actually, what about all those other missteps that he had in the past? Why did I ignore them? And the rumours as well? You see, that's the exact dilemma that I've seen from fans in Ireland. And it's not a sudden realisation either. It's no secret that a lot of Irish fans got off the train early. And indeed, there are those fans who simply don't care about his antics and will follow him no matter what. You know, they do exist. But it appears that this incident has forced the rest to reevaluate their loyalties. And while I can't Professor X my way into every Irish person's mind, I can give you my take based on what I've seen. On Facebook, I posed a simple question: will you support Conor McGregor when he returns to the octagon? We got a good response, around 200 opinions. And based on these opinions, along with other reactions I've seen, along with taking notes from what history has taught us, because, you know, that's very important too, the evidence points to this. His Irish fan base has been irreparably damaged, but it's not destroyed. The days of the UFC effectively promoting him as an Irish hero, they're numbered. That's just not on brand anymore. The Irish public just won't buy that. And that was a real unique selling point for McGregor. It's the reason why so many fans travel to watch him fight. He was one of Ireland's own, and we are known to support our own. And understand that a lot of those fans who travelled were not MMA fans. But that's the point. The key to becoming a massive draw in MMA isn't to entice every MMA fan. I mean, that helps, but that's step one because they're already in. They'll watch any old shite like me. But step two, the real key, is to attract non-MMA fans. It's to make them care enough about you so they go buy a plane ticket to follow you halfway across the world, or switch away from their friends' reruns to buy a pay-per-view. I mean, it's like everything else. Marvel movies aren't incredibly popular and successful because nerds go and buy movie tickets. They're buying tickets regardless. They're super successful because the cool people have bought in. So that's the question. Will Conor McGregor be able to garner the Irish support from non-MMA fans? And I'm quite skeptical about that. And I'm not saying he gets none of this support, But does he get it to the same level as he did in previous fights? It's tough to say that he will. Remember when I said that Irish people support their own? But the sense that I get right now from the mainstream fans is that they don't really see him as their own. I mean, back in the day after he won the featherweight title, there was serious talk about the Lord Mayor of Dublin hosting a civic reception for McGregor's return to Ireland. You know, one of those public parades of one success. It ultimately fell through, but back then, I think that was warranted. That would have been cool. These days, however, the idea would be ridiculed. It would honestly come off as a joke. He simply doesn't have the national support that he used to have. Ireland's Taoiseach, the title given to the Irish Prime Minister, even made it a point to distance himself from the fighter when they both appeared in the Chicago St. Patrick's Day parade this year. And while this won't directly influence people's support for McGregor, it just illustrates how he's seen by the people in power in the country. And I think there's something to be said about his change in persona too. Remember when I said that his persona evolved rather than changed over the course of his featherweight run? Well, if you look at his recent fights, especially the Khabib one, you could argue that it did eventually change. His brand of mental warfare devolved at best. If you look at early McGregor, he was quick-witted, entertaining, and even insightful at times. The version that we saw against Khabib was a shell of that. But then on the other hand, if you're a sports fan, you know that blind allegiance does exist. And in sports, time and winning heals most wounds, and I think for a bunch of people here, that still applies. So if McGregor returns, wins, and is perceived to be doing all the right things, I think fans with one foot out will quickly forget and pull that foot right back in. If he loses, who knows? Either way, it's clear that his next few moves are crucial because he's done a ton of damage to his Irish fan base. So even though his appeal has narrowed, some will travel, and a hell of a lot will watch, including me. But not everybody will watch in support. For some, he'll still be that babyface, but I think for more at this point, he'll be that dastardly heel. And as it pertains to the original premise, have the Irish turned against Conor McGregor? As cheesy as this sounds, I think for a lot of people, it feels like it's the other way around. So if it's your first time finding this channel, my name is Robert. Thanks for watching again, and subscribe, yeah? Where was I? Oh yeah. We do a weekly podcast which has been on hiatus for the last few weeks, but it's coming back, and we're also going to do more of these type of videos and also a live chat as well. So subscribe, yeah. Cheers.